Hey everyone, it's Brandon here again for another video. The topic of today's video is spiritual attainments, as well as comparing different spiritual traditions and religious traditions, as well as philosophy, atheism, whatever. We're going to look at the merit of trying to compare different systems of finding truth, of improving yourself as a human being. And yeah, that's the topic. So let's get going. I know some of my viewers, some of my friends, and myself, we all have a background in learning some from Leo Gura from actualize.org. I've noticed people tend to like those videos. And, I've got a bit of insight into his system. I practice kind of under his recommendations, more or less, under his teachings for a while. So let's go ahead and start there. So we've got Leo Gura on one hand claiming to be the most awakened thing ever, right? That's pretty much the claim. Like no one else is awake to the level of Leo Gura. How do we verify that? What does he claim awake to be? At the end of the day, Leo Gura judges awakening by his own internal experiences, his own mind states. There are different metrics that other people are going to look at for gauging awakening. Recently, I spoke with a Buddhist teacher, and he was telling me, oh, this person over here is claiming to be an arahant or an arhat. Basically, they're fully enlightened. Other than being a Buddha, that's the only higher thing within the Theravada Buddhist system. Within that system, within that tradition, they're claiming to be the highest level of awakening. That's very improbable. Why is that? Because the person would be able to go through immense physical pain. They could literally have their flesh kind of ripped off from their arm. That's literally was kind of the example. And I had been under that impression as well before. So there are these kind of really rigorous ways of being able to verify awakening levels in a more objective way. How can someone stand up to immense physical pain? Are they going to suffer in that moment? At the end of the day, we have people like Leo Gura who are going to talk about awakening, and their goal is not to overcome suffering. Which, I mean, I could get into my personal ideas on things, but right now I'm trying to just kind of give a broad overview of what people look at and value. So there can be values of how humble is a spiritual teacher? How generous are they? Even how little sleep do they need? Are they able to stand for years straight without lying down? And when we look back to the Buddhist suttas, if we look at the original Pali suttas, or, the closest thing we have to those today, there are some examples where the Buddha himself teaches, and he teaches that someone who's fully awakened, they should be able to stay awake fairly well. They won't need to rest all day. But then, at the same time, he's resting one day. He's sleeping, taking a nap of sorts. And one of the people learning from him goes up to him, and they ask, hey, Buddha, didn't you teach that we really shouldn't need this thing? We really shouldn't have to follow this normal bodily need the way that most humans do. And the Buddha's like, yes, that's true. But that's true on the level of basically how the mind is able to withstand something. The Buddha supposedly isn't sleeping because he's experiencing suffering, from tiredness, and he's trying to get away from that. He said basically, oh, the body needs sleep, so the body is going to sleep. It's that simple. And the Buddha also talks about having back pain as kind of a significant thing in his life. And really the only way to get out of that physical pain would be to go into a certain spiritual attainment known as Naroda Samapati, which is basically a sustained, lengthened version of cessation where you go beyond the realm of experience entirely, and he's no longer a conscious being during that period of time, more or less. He's not going to have conscious contact with the painful sensations because he's not even going to experience himself as a human being. He will have essentially zero experience during the time that spiritual attainment is, taking place, and he'll come back from that. And that's basically the only way that he said that he could get away from something as simple as back pain. But he could get away from it. He had the power to not have to suffer from that. But we look at it, and there is even an example in the early suttas that an arahant, someone who's supposed to be fully enlightened in the early Buddhist system, as far as that goes, he's fully enlightened, but he has so much pain at a certain period of time that he commits suicide. And now, on the other hand, we have people from the past, people today as well, claiming that if you get full liberation from suffering, that also means some type of liberation from physical pain. But then we have teachings in Buddhism saying that there are essentially two arrows. There's the arrow that it's kind of like a metaphor. You can take out the second arrow of basically the mental suffering, the amplification of the physical painful sensations. You could remove that from yourself, but you can't actually remove all pain as a human being. Everybody is subject to that. And so you hear a lot of different things when it comes to just Buddhism, just that as one system where we're trying to gauge how awakened is someone. How awake is someone? So within that system, we find a lot of different opinions. We find modern Western sources from people like Daniel Ingram, who more along the lines claim that awakening isn't necessarily an entirely supernatural thing. It's still an important thing, a noteworthy thing. It's very impressive in a sense. And awakening is real, and it has real capabilities, and those can even be studied by certain scientific measures. There are plenty of other Western people who are doing scientific studies into such things. He's just someone I've read his book. I've learned a bit from his teachings, so I know him as an example. And it's actually common that a lot of the monks today will dislike an opinion such as his, that awakening is a real thing, people can attain it, but it's not necessarily going to make you omniscient, and you're not going to teleport to the realms of the gods. We have to wonder, if we look at, let's say, Christianity by the lens, what actual miracles were done? Was there actual physical healing? Did Jesus walk on water? I'm not claiming one way or another here. I want us to look at this as an example. Some people will claim that Christianity is a beautifully intricate spiritual tradition, and it is a path to awakening, and it has much value, but the sort of mythical beliefs of the time back in the day, when Christianity really started to take hold in the world, people had a different view of reality. We believed in magic more. We didn't believe in more like physical laws of the universe, a more scientific view of the world. And so there was a lot more belief in things such as gods and spirits and all of this having a huge tangible effect on reality. So there's a thought that, maybe in Christianity and maybe in essentially every other spiritual system, what we've learned and what has come down in writing or oral tradition from all the various spiritual traditions of the world, maybe all of this is embellished by the views of the time. Back then, people saw magic as a tangible thing rather than something explainable by physical laws that were just not yet understood. So we have that possible way of viewing things. Maybe there were things that took place, seemed to be fully miracles, but had some sort or some level of explanation which made the event real if you subtract a hefty amount of embellishment. Was the Buddha actually able to shoot water and flames out of his arms? Is there value in that? Does that actually matter when it comes to awakening? These are things we have to consider. Is levitation important? What's more important? Immense tolerance to pain or being able to walk on water? Or is it more of a deep wisdom and insight into how things work rather than the manipulation of things? That's a view that you'll hear as well. So there are so many different perspectives here, and we don't really have 100%, we don't even have 100% accurate or verified knowledge of the past and what actually took place. So we have to be careful there. If we want to say that activities in Buddhism were real and all the mythical, magical things in that system of teachings were real, why would all of Christianity's mythical, magical events not be real? We have to really kind of consider that. And then also, why wouldn't these events be possible today? Where's the explanation there? And there are people who claim to be able to do supernatural things, but often when looked at in modern times, very rarely are they able to do supernatural feats to the degree that they are usually claimed. Very rarely can people do supernatural feats to the level that they claim. Leo Gura, for example, claimed to be able to turn into an alien intelligence on camera. The only problem was, him as God, omniscient, and omnipotent, him as God, he couldn't find a camera that was able to record it. Think about how odd and funny that is. And what is the way that Leo Gura becomes awakened? Well, it's basically through putting powerful psychoactive chemicals in his ass. We're not joking here. And there are a lot of people who take this seriously. They'd almost die as martyrs, talking about how serious putting certain potent chemicals in your ass is as a spiritual path. And the thing is, I'm not even here denying that. It sounds like a funny example. I love that example because it's fucking hilarious. And it's even more hilarious that there's some actually good degree of truth behind where these claims come from. So there's psychoactive substance paths to incredible states of consciousness and insight. There are meditation paths. There are other forms of yoga that can take you there. There are actually many, many different paths and many, many different traditions that can take you to a place where you deem it to feel like, wow, I've really understood something. I've really awoken. And the fact is, how can we actually tell that what you feel to be true is more important, more valid than someone over here who thinks they're just as much the coolest thing since sliced bread? I don't think there are that great of ways to tell, honestly. I think the majority of claims are based on subjectivity, which is fine. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what we really have to work with the most is our subjective experience. So if we're able to level that up to certain capabilities, that's awesome. We need to understand that that's valuable. Talking about objective ways of measuring this, I think at the end of the day is missing the point. There are people, I don't even want to promote it. I just want to say there's a certain website when I was a kid that showed some crazy feats, in a sense, of debauchery when it relates to pain tolerance. And I'd say those people seem to have a crazy amount of pain tolerance, the same as, some of these Hindu yogis or Buddhist, practitioners and monks. What they might be able to, you might be able to see on the outside, but how much can we know that that's not even just a show itself? How much can you practice not seeming to react internally to pain on the outside? How much can you have a straight face while you're in a painful situation? How is that important when it comes to awakening? Is numbness a virtue? That's another thing. So at the end of the day, like I'm kind of exploring, direct teaching from someone who has made some of these claims about physical pain tolerance. And, I have my views about this, but I'm also open. If these things are possible, I've thought before, maybe this is possible. Maybe this is part of the path. Maybe this relates to ending suffering for oneself and others. So I'm going to explore that. But at the end of the day, being realistic, I think the most important thing that you can find when it relates to awakening or spiritual progress is, how has your life changed? Has your individual experience seemed to become benefited by your practice, by your learning, by your understanding in whatever spiritual or religious system or philosophical system that you believe? Like, has that increased? I think that is, at the end of the day, that is the empirical shit you have to work with. When we get into, I'm going to objectively prove my awakened state to others, even to want to do that to such a drastic degree that you're going to cut your arm off to show that you're awake, I think there are some pitfalls in that whole situation. And at the end of the day, from what I've seen in what I believe are authentic Buddhist teachings, looking at the Pain Olympics as some sort of proof of awakening, I don't know how much that's a good gauge. As far as objective proof, I think a person's ability to show understanding of deep awakened states, of subjective states of deep insight. If you can encounter the teachings, encounter the deep wisdom teachings, and seem to actually hold your ground within kind of the deeper mysteries of understanding, if you can communicate on that level with another person who's gone there, I think you both can kind of get a sense of very, very roughly where one person is and where the other person is. But again, this is kind of my opinion. Some of you might agree with the opinion, and this is just one viewpoint that I'll hold for the duration of me talking in this video. A month later, I might emphasize a different viewpoint, or even tonight, I might think about it more for a couple more hours, contemplate it, and I'll have a bit of a different perspective. So keep in mind, I'm trying to illuminate one thing, one perspective. But there's a lot of territory here. How do we actually tell who's awakened? How do you tell that you're awakened? Is it of any importance at all if you are awakened or not? Is awakening and enlightenment purely a figment of your imagination? And to what degree and in what sense is it a figment of your imagination? Is it a fabricated thing created by your own mind and own experience? Because from certain viewpoints, awakening and enlightenment are pure fabrication, purely created by your own mind, also purely relating to human conditioning. There are ways to view the problem of awakening, of truth, of consciousness, of God, all of this. There are ways to view that to where it's literally all made up. And there are other ways to view it to where it all being made up doesn't necessarily reduce its value at all. So many different ways that you can view this question, so many different ways that you can encounter the validity of one spiritual tradition versus another, of one person's spiritual path versus another. At the end of the day, what I'll say is, what is the point and what is the benefit of this divine dick measuring contest? What is the benefit of this? So I'll leave you with that question to ponder for yourself. If you have any opinions you wish to share, any views you wish to share, any sources or claims you want to share in the comments, I encourage you. Please share below. Let's create a conversation here. Like the video if you enjoyed it and if you want to see more content like this. And feel free to subscribe to my channel and ring the notification bell icon if you want to see more of my stuff. Hope you guys all have a good rest of your day. Bye.